Okay, welcome back everyone to the Injuries 101 podcast. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk about the Oakland Raiders quarterback Derek Carr. I always like to call him David, but that's his brother. So what do we know about Carr? He's 27. He has played for the Raiders his entire career. I'll go through a couple different stat lines. In 2015, he played all 16 games, went 573 attempts for a little under 4,000 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Very respectable year. Then he had added 33 rushes for 138 yards, but no touchdowns. 2016 only played 15 games, about 50 yards less than he did the previous year, just under 4,000 yards again, but this time 28 touchdowns, but only 6 interceptions. So dropped on both, but still a fantastic ratio. Added about another 39 rushes for 70 yards, so he's not much of a runner, and we know that. Last year, he played 15 games, but as we know, he wasn't very healthy. 515 attempts, as well as 3,496 passing yards. 22 TDs, but only 13 interceptions. So obviously TDs dropped. As far as interceptions dropped, are about the same. So, but not the best year for him. I'm going to talk about why in a minute. He chipped in another 23 rushes for 66 yards. Pretty mediocre. Still no TDs. So Fantasy Pros has him for 2018 going 560 attempts, a little under 3,900 passing yards, 24 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. Not very good overall. I mean, not even as good as his 2015 season. So they do project him to finally rush for a touchdown this year. We'll see if that's going to happen. He would be their 21st ranked QB, and I want you to decide by the end of this whether or not he is that's a good spot for him, or he should be a little higher than that. So let's talk about this injury that Carr suffered and why it's such a big deal. So I don't have any models or here in my house like I do in the clinic, but basically what happened was he suffered a back injury in week 4. And he's already recently admitted that this has affected him throughout the entire season. Now, he wouldn't probably admit it during the season because he wanted to play, but he in hindsight, he did mention that this is definitely still bothering him. During the season, and that he's finally over it this offseason and he's ready to rock and roll in 2018. So what was the exact injury? So the injury is called what we call a transverse process. So if you think of the spinal column and then think of those are the vertebrae, almost like building blocks or bricks for a house. Now there's almost kind of little bones that come out to the side called transverse processes. And those are actually what he fractured. He fractured one of those. So while this sounds scary, it's actually not. Like it's anytime a fracture, especially in your back, can be scary, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, basically, he suffered it while he's coming down kind of awkwardly in the third quarter of the Broncos game that they were facing. So a normal timeline for this is about 2 to 6 weeks. So, which is not awful. That's not crazy. I mean, for a fracture in your back, 2 to 6 weeks is pretty good. But here's the problem. Carr came back in 1 week. So, all right, we'll say best case scenario, 2 weeks. Worst case scenario, 6 weeks, a month and a half. So what do? I come back in a week because I'm Superman and I think that my bones heal faster. No. So here's the problem. He didn't listen to guidelines. He tried to play through pain. He wasn't as flexible and able to move the way he needed to move. So now he kind of suffers this injury and he rushes back and the rest of his season suffers and his team as a result. So if he took maybe 2 or 3 weeks off, let it properly heal, let whoever the backup was at the time come in and work. Maybe he was fine. Maybe it would have been good. I don't know. But either way, it didn't happen, and unfortunately, all we can say is what if. So let me give you a kind of a refresher about what this injury. We've seen someone else with this injury before. Now, who else suffered this injury that was pretty famous and ended up derailing his career? None other than the Dallas Cowboys' Tony Romo. So Romo suffered the same exact fracture. I don't know what level it was, but same location in terms of type of fracture. And this basically led the door open for Dak Prescott, and the rest is history. I mean, he's been there basically ever since. So these are usually secondary to violent direct hits. When you just think of just straight kind of hitting the lower back, and kind of very uncomfortable. And that's basically what happened to Carr. You can also have like a contusion or a sprain of the back. But most of the time, these are non-surgical. These are painful. They can cause inflammation to the kind of surrounding tissues. These are anti-inflammatories, heating pads, sometimes like lidocaine patches. You can use every once in a while. You consider like muscle relaxers or something like tramadol or like a narcotic if you have to. We really try to avoid that. Fascinating little tidbit here that recent data shows that after 1 year of review from a patient that was prescribed a narcotic, it only took 5 days on a narcotic to become hooked. That's crazy. So that hence the epidemic in this country, or part of it. So I obviously try to avoid narcotics at all costs. So sometimes heat ice, you can use a lot of PT, a lot of sometimes ultrasound, whether it's sometimes shockwave therapy or TENS units, just something to relax the back and allow that bone to heal. Now, prolonged immobilization is not recommended and not necessary, because that will probably end up causing a little bit more harm than anything. And most patients are able to walk, not play, walk after 16 days. And Carr came back in 7. So yeah, obviously not ideal. So most of them are able to return to work in 2 months. So not only did he return to work in a week, but this is a lot more strenuous physically than probably most people's careers. So is this is this injury career ending? And as we know, no, it's not. I mean, obviously Carr played the rest of the year, although he wasn't very effective. Romo, I think that was just kind of the end of his career, and he just wasn't as effective as he wanted to be, and he called it quits. But either way, it is not career ending. It should not be. And I think Carr will show us that this year. So basically, what do we know about Carr? I mean, he's 27. He's got a pretty respectable offense. He is under a new coach in Gruden, who said he has already, quote, mastered the offense, which is apparently super complicated, and Gruden is notorious for this. It looks like some of the other offensive personnel, are not getting the complicated offense like Carr is. But the good news is that at least his quarterback is. He had this back injury. He should be fully healed by now. His risk of re-injury, in my opinion, is about 30%. So it's there, but it's not overly large. So the ultimate question is, can Carr come back in 2018 like he did in 2016, when he basically almost threw for 4,000 yards and almost 30 TDs, which is pretty respectable. It's not top 5, but it's pretty respectable. So, I mean, I believe he physically can. I'm on the fence about whether or not he actually will. I mean, I think offensive scheming and possible re-injury may consider derailing his potential season, but we'll see. I mean, injury-wise, I'm not overly concerned about this injury from a future point of view. Now, the good news is he's got plenty of offensive weapons. I mean, he's got beast mode in Marshawn Lynch. He's got Amari Cooper, who is potentially a top 10 wide receiver. He's got Jordy Nelson, who is like father time. I mean, he was good or reliable for Aaron Rodgers, and now he's got a different quarterback throwing to him. He could be a sneaky wide receiver 2, maybe 3. I mean, he's got Martavius Bryant, who didn't have the career that he was expecting in Pittsburgh. And then he's got Jared Cook, who I'm actually pretty high on this year. So they also, the Raiders also have a top 10 offensive line, which is very important in order to keep him upright and keep beast mode, give him some running lanes, give Carr time to assess the field and throw the ball. So I'm kind of a little bit excited about what Carr can do this year. I mean, in my opinion, Carr is kind of a tier 4 quarterback. So I have him as number 13 right now, or somewhere around there. So this would kind of be after Cam, after Ryan, after Stafford, and like Rivers. That would be like tier 3 in my opinion. Tier 4 is kind of Cousins, Goff, Big Ben. Then you got like kind of like Mahomes and Mariota. So I put him in that range. I think he has the potential to kind of lead the 4, but maybe not quite as high as like a tier 3 guy. His current ADP is 125, which I think is appropriate. You might be able to steal him this year and get a little profit out of him if you get him late enough and he ends up panning out for you. As far as the way I'm looking at quarterbacks this year is I feel like there's probably about 24 different ones that could potentially all be top 12. Obviously, we don't know which ones are going to be in the top 12. We have a good idea, but obviously, I think he's one of those that could potentially be top 12. Like if you told me that Watson was going to be a top 12 quarterback last year when he was healthy, obviously, I think most people would have said, no, you're crazy. Like, that's not going to happen. And then he came out and went bananas, and he was ridiculous. So, I mean, Carr could technically do it. We know who he is, but, let's see. Maybe a little bit of offensive scheming from a Gruden standpoint will do him good. So that's all I have for Derek Carr. Thank you for tuning in. Next time, I will be talking about Corey Davis, the stud wide receiver from the Titans, and I will give you some pointers, some thoughts, and why I'm a little concerned about his injury and kind of going from there. Thanks. Bye.